board members, and it is 3 o'clock. So I will call this virtual board meeting of the ECUA to order. At this point, all of the board members are unmuted, as is Mr. Johnson, Mr. Beasley, and Mr. Woody. I have asked Mr. Perkins to lead us in the invocation and the pledge. So you're recognized, Mr. Perkins.
Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you for the resilience and teamwork of the citizens of this community as we struggle through this pandemic. Thank you for allowing us to serve, and thank you for the other elected officials, the mayor, the county commissioner, the governor, the city council, to all work together and try and get through these difficult times. May we be leaders that will inspire our children and our community. Grant us wisdom, we ask, and making our decisions, we ask for your guidance. Amen.
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 And if you don't have a flag, I'm sure we can imagine one. And if you'll lead us in the pledge, Mr. Perkins.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
which stands one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I don't think we would make it as a choir. We come now to the adoption of the agenda, which you have. I have a couple of additions to the agenda. One is item 11B, which is a handout which you all should have received, and it will be part of the executive director's report. I would also like to add item 14A, public outreach to help with bills. Does anyone else have anything to add? And just speak your name and say it, if you will.
Chairman, this is Mr. Perkins, just saying that 11B is titled Gilliamard Street Emergency Repair.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Yes, Dr. Walker.
This is Larry Walker. I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Cedric, second.
Okay, I believe Vicki and Dr. Alexander both seconded it. Shall we call the roll to vote? Why don't we do that? Ms. Campbell? Yay. Dr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Aye.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Okay, the agenda is approved as submitted, as amended. We come now to public hearings, of which there's none, and then we have an open forum. We have one request to speak in the open forum, Ms. Sonia Gomel from Gulf Coast Underground.
Madam Chairman?
Ms. Yes.
We received an email from Ms. Gomel withdrawing that request.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wishes to address us in open forum? If not, we will move to presentations, of which there's none, and approval of the minutes. You have received the minutes of the meeting of March 24th. Is there a motion to approve as submitted?
So moved. Cedric.
Dr. Alexander moved it. Dr. Walker seconded. I will call your names to vote. Ms. Campbell? Yay. Dr. Alexander?
Yay.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
And Dr. Walker?
Yes. Madam Chairman,
Okay.
does the chair vote?
Oh, yes, I guess I should. And I vote yay, too. And I guess I should vote on the agenda as well. Thank you for catching that, Dr. Walker.
You're welcome.
We move now to the consent agenda, which we will do as we did the agenda last time. And I will, because this is kind of a unusual kind of meeting, I'm going to read the subject and the recommendation of all of the items on the consent agenda, after which anyone who wishes to remove any item for discussion may do so, or we can vote on all of them, or however many. The first item, item 8A, is award of bid, hydrofluorisilicic acid. And the recommendation is that the board award the contract for hydrofluorisilicic acid to Univar USA, the lowest bidder, at $2.70 per gallon, with an anticipated expenditure of $100,000 for the contract period, with funding from the appropriate budget line item. The next item is item 8B. Award of bid West Intendencia Romana water main replacement. The recommendation is that the board, number one, waive the minor errors related to the transcription error and the bid signatures, and award the project to Evans Contracting Incorporated, the low bidder, in the amount of $356,589 for the West Intendencia Romana water main replacement. And two, approve funding through the transfer of $400,000 from CIP project RW 906, replacement of antiquated water lines, to a newly created CIP project number. Item 8C, award of purchase, replacement container delivery truck. The recommendation is that the board approve the purchase of one 2021 model year Ford F-750 and installation of Ecua's existing container delivery body from Bozard Ford Incorporated of Jacksonville, Florida. Removal and reinstallation of the existing container delivery body on the new chassis at a cost of $69,387, with funding from CIP project RT-803, commercial vehicle replacement. Item 8D, contract extension, annual full service HVAC maintenance contract. The recommendation is that the board approve the optional one-year extension of the current contract with Engineered Cooling Services, Pensacola, Florida, for annual HVAC maintenance service, with funding available from the appropriate budget line item. Item 8E, Sears BJ Wholesale, termination of easement. The recommendation is that the Ecua Board, one, approve and concur with the surplus declaration findings of the Executive Director that a portion of Ecua's easement located near the intersection of Creighton Road and Davis Highway is not necessary, useful, or profitable in the operation of the utility systems of Ecua. And two, authorize the Executive Director to execute the related termination of easement and quit claim of the aforementioned portion of the easement. And this is followed by Resolution 20-06, which is 8F. The next item, 8G, is request to vacate portion of Bay Boulevard retained easement. The recommendation is that the Ecua Board approve and concur in the findings of the Executive Director that the area of the retained easement of the former Bay Boulevard right-of-way within the limits of 1010 Bay Boulevard is not necessary, useful, or profitable in the operation of the utility system of Ecua, and authorize the vacation of the aforementioned portion of the easement. And I believe there's an associated resolution number 8H. And the next item is item 8I, award of bid sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation annual unit price contract. And the recommendation is that the board reject the apparent low bid from Gulf Coast Underground LLC based on failure to comply with certain bid requirements and staff concerns regarding past performance, And 2, award the unit price contract for sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation to BLD Services, LLC, Kenner, Louisiana, the second low bidder, with funding from CIP Project RI 704, Sanitary Sewer Manhole Rehabilitation, supplemented by CIP Project RI 700, Infiltration and Inflow as needed. Those are the items on the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove any of those items? This is Vicki Campbell. I'd like to make a motion to move items A through I of the consent agenda. We have a motion to Mr. Perkins.
I second.
It's been seconded. In an abundance of caution, I would suggest that we pull item I and have the staff simply give the background on that. We did have one speaker who wanted to address this in open forum, and I want to be sure that everyone in the public understands why we are not recommending the low bidder. So with your indulgence, I'd like to pull I, if that's acceptable. Ms. Kim. Okay. And Mr. Perkins, are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then we're voting on all items except for I, and I will call the roll. Ms. Campbell? Aye. Dr. Alexander?
Aye.
Mr. Perkins?
Aye.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye as well. The next, then we will go back to item 8I, which is the award of bid sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation annual unit price contract. Mr. Johnson, would you briefly outline the recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I'd be glad to. This is a bid proposal to establish unit prices to be worked on over a year through an annual period. It is for sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation, and there are several different methods of doing that. There were 5 bids that were received on this. We looked at the 3 lowest that are listed in your agenda. The low bidder, Gulf Coast Underground, we found significant problems with the information supplied in their bid. They failed to properly complete some of the required non-discrimination and solicitation forms. We're also concerned about the work of one of their subcontractors. Based on these things, the staff felt like that it was our duty to recommend instead the second low bidder, BLD.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there a motion? This is Vicki Campbell. I'd like to move staff recommendation. Ms. Campbell moved it. Is there a second?
Larry Walker, second.
Cedric.
Okay, Dr. Walker seconded it. And I will now call for a vote. I'm going to rotate these. I apologize for not having done that before. Dr. Alexander?
Aye.
Mr. Perkins?
Aye.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Chair votes aye. Ms. Campbell? Aye. Okay, and it passes unanimously. Thank you. So everything in the consent agenda passes unanimously. We move now to operational items. Item 9A is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act opt-out provision. I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson to address this, and then I will also ask Mr. Beasley to as well. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, with the pandemic that we're all dealing with right now, Congress has passed several related acts. One of those was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that was signed into law on March 18th. This act had some issues that would affect ECUA's human resources policies. Our human resources department began looking at that very closely, very quickly. It was set to go into effect on April 1st. Because many of our employees, really all of our employees, are essential service employees, there were provisions of the Act that would make it in some ways difficult for us to manage our staff. There is a provision in the Act that allows employers of first responders and essential services to opt out of the Act. So we made a decision fairly soon, by the end of March, to evaluate that opting out. I, as executive director, polled the board members individually at the end of March and basically found a consensus to opt out. We also had some support from our attorney who had reviewed it and saw that as a viable option for us as well. And the staff in general believed that that was the right thing to do. Because the next board meeting was not until today, April 28th, I felt like it was important for us to declare ourselves as opted out. So I did that. Now, this is something that would normally require board action. It didn't seem appropriate to try to call a special meeting for that purpose. So we have prepared this agenda item to give the board an opportunity to discuss the item and either confirm and ratify the decision to opt out or rescind that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Beasley, would you also opine?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, as we all realize, these are exceptional times, and Congress was moving very quickly and hastily to give various measures of relief. This particular act had within it an opt-out provision, and essentially the opt-out, what it does, only apply to frontline entities. That would be first responders, law enforcement, utilities. The idea being is that these entities provide essential services to the public and could not risk a scenario where the employees, through an exposure scenario, controlled the employment levels throughout the course of the work week, day, or month. And so they allowed those entities to, quote, opt out to develop their own plans. The idea being, and the easiest is the police or fire department. Utilities, there's application also, but it's clearer to see in a police or fire department, which is we have to maintain some level of diligence and performance of the duties despite this virus. We can't just shelter at home. So the opt-out provision allows for that. Well, it's also an exceptional time for us at ECUA because a lot of our guidance, enabling statute and code, don't really deal with global pandemics. Obviously, this is our first one. The question came up of, one, should the utility opt out? And two, does the executive director have the authority to opt out? Obviously, this isn't a construction purchase. This isn't a risk management scenario or the traffic accident or whatever. It's exceptional. My memorandum produced to the board, one, encouraged the board and supported the decision to opt out for the reasons that are stated in the congressional record, which is to allow the ECUA to put into its own measures that accommodate the fact that it is essential for public service. It's an essential public service. So the support from legal was, yes, you should opt out. Secondly, the question came up right after that was, does the executive director have the authority to opt out, or is this a board vote? My answer is, I wasn't sure. Mr. Johnson wasn't sure. It's not clear. We're into a frontier scenario. So he talked to each of the board members. He then made his own decision within the discretion of the executive director. Where we are today is really a belt and suspenders scenario, which is in case Mr. Johnson, as the executive director, did not have the authority, we're tendering it to the board. Also, in case that the decision of Mr. Johnson to check with each of the board members constitutes a, quote, polling under the sunshine, we want to make sure that this issue comes before the board to be fully discussed and vetted. We believe the decision was correct. We support it. We're unsure about whether the executive director has the authority, and that's why we tendered the matter to the board for a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. And now we'll entertain a motion to put this on the table. The recommendation being that the board confirm and ratify the action of the executive director to opt Ecua out of the requirements of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. Is there a motion?
This is Walker. I so move.
Dr. Walker moves.
To get this talk going, I will second that motion.
Okay, and Ms. Campbell seconds it. Now, is there discussion?
Yes, this is Vicki Campbell. Surely our employees as well as the citizens understand that we're in an essential business and we can't go without sanitation pickup or those out there repairing sewer lines during the pandemic. Certainly I'm glad that we're looking at other options of our own instead of, going with this and doing the opt-out provision. I want our employees to understand how much we value tremendously. I've had more phone calls, I just want to say this, in this last month, more phone calls of thank you and gratitude for the people that they see on the sides of the roads working in sewer, or the people picking up trash cans, for the people picking up yard waste, the people picking up bulky waste. I mean, I can tell you in 7 years on this board, I've never gotten as many thank you calls as I've gotten in the last couple months. Just people overwhelmed with thank you for those employees out there doing their job during all of this. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for those remarks, Ms. Campbell. Anyone else? If not, we will vote on the motion, starting with Mr. Perkins.
Perkins votes yes.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
And Dr. Alexander?
Yes.
And it passes unanimously. Thank you for your leadership on that, Mr. Johnson, and for all of your guidance, Mr. Beasley. Item 9B is employee incentive pay. The recommendation is that the board approve the proposed employee incentive pay program for eligible employees based on a flat rate of $100 per week for a period commencing on March 30th until Executive Order 20-91 is rescinded, or for a period of 2 months, whichever occurs first, with funding through a transfer for operating contingencies. Mr. Johnson, would you like to speak to this?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is really a follow-up to the previous item. Obviously, our employees do provide essential services. We're all concerned for our own health and safety and those of our family, and we're concerned about these employees. And the fact that they are here every day doing these essential jobs is important. It subjects them to a higher level of risk. So with the governor's executive order 20-91, that basically is a stay-at-home order, our guys and women are still coming out and doing the job on a daily basis. So that order has been in place since April 1st, and through the end of this month. We are not sure even yet exactly if he intends to end the order at the end of the month or extend it for another week or two or more. So basically we're looking at for each week in April, including the one starting March 30th and then the one ending this Friday, May 1st, and on beyond that, in accordance with the governor's order, paying those employees that are in the field and out front of this organization doing those things, important jobs, this $100 per week as incentive pay. The directors basically reviewed all the jobs that were in their particular areas. We identified 518 employees that we believe would qualify for this incentive pay. We think it's something that we need to do, and we would ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there a motion?
So moves, Cedric.
Dr. Alexander moved it. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Mr. Perkins. Any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, we'll start with Dr. Alexander, and then I heard Dr. Walker, and I think I heard Ms. Campbell, so we'll do it in that order. Dr. Alexander, you're recognized.
So I would like to thank Mr. Johnson for speaking up the way he has for 500 and some employees that work for ECUA. And to be quite honest with you, I think $100 is really a very small amount considering they're doing the work and interfacing, and many of them out there in the public every day, still carrying on their functions, doing their jobs, and even those that are working from home. So I really wish we were able to give them more, and I want to go on a record saying that because I think they deserve more. But I understand it's tough financial times, but I do want to recognize the fact in terms of the work that they're doing, and oftentimes not having the ability to isolate the way that they do, the way that we do, based on whatever their job function may happen to be. I really wish we were able to do more for them for consideration. I'd like the board to consider that. I don't know what that would look like being junior to the board, but I certainly would put that out there for consideration. But at this time, too, a little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. But I think it goes beyond just recognizing the work that they do, but really compensating them for this very unprecedented time that we live in. And that's all I got to say about that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. Well said. Dr. Walker.
Madam Chairman, I have a somewhat different take on it. I note that this additional pay is because of a greater risk of exposure, and I take that literally. And I think that this additional pay should go to employees who face a greater risk of exposure, but not to employees who don't necessarily. And as I look at the 4 factors that are listed on page 46 of the agenda package, face-to-face interaction and contact with outside customers, yes, indeed, I support that. And the 4th one on the list, working in small spaces with numerous other people, I definitely support that. But field work, this is the 2nd item on the list. Field work is going on all around us in the community. Anybody who works outside is working. I've driven around recently, looking around, observing what's there to see, and houses are being built. All kinds of outside work are being done. We're being told that many outside activities, recreational or for health reasons or whatever, are basically safe as long as you maintain some distance and not in a crowd. So I think that field work is not an appropriate factor in itself. And the 3rd item on these 4 items, material handling, garbage, sewage, etc. Again, this scientific information that I've received, the medical information that I've received, says that there's very little risk of exposure to the coronavirus due to handling due to driving a garbage truck. It's not handling garbage, it's driving a garbage truck, or due to handling yard debris, or working in a sewage treatment plant. Very low risk of exposure. Now, this is a difficult time for ECUA, or it's going to be financially. we're going to have to deal with millions of dollars in shortfall of revenue this year. And so I don't think we should be careless in how we spend money. And so I think that this should not be 518 employees receiving this additional pay. It's not that I am unsympathetic to people. It's not that I don't care about employees, but it's because I fear that we have a tremendous financial crunch ahead of us, and we should be trying to save every penny that's not from being inappropriately spent. I would ask other board members to consider those thoughts.
Dr. Walker, did you want to make that a substitute motion?
No, I'm just discussing.
Okay, all right. Ms. Campbell.
Well, I appreciate both Cedric's words and Dr. Walker's words. I truly appreciate our employees. I personally talked with the administrator as well as our HR department to make sure that we were doing everything we could do for their safety. I know that we had some employees that were working from home. I know that we put up glass to keep face-to-face from happening. There are a lot of things that we were doing, and at a time when millions of people want to go to work, but they can't, they also have water bills. I have a hard time spending their money on our employees. So it's not that I don't appreciate our employees. I truly appreciate everything they've done. So I thought, what about if we propose instead to give each employee that truly worked at risk face-to-face during this entire 8 weeks an additional week of paid leave. So that way it wouldn't be money coming out of someone's pocket, and of course their supervisors can make sure they don't all take it at one time, But, time is money, and I don't know how they would, the employees would feel about that, but I would like to give them some extra leave because I know this has put a hardship on a lot of people. It's put a hardship on me, and I don't even have kids at home. So, a lot of things at home needed to be taken care of, and a lot of things in people's businesses needed to be taken care of, and their children, their parents. So I want to do something for them, but just taking money out of rate cuts, and I can see where Dr. Walker's coming. I mean, we don't know how this is going to affect our bottom line. So I'm thinking maybe if we did a week additional vacation or paid leave, that they would appreciate it as much, and just like to get everybody's thoughts on that.
This is Lois. I speak in support of the recommendation. I have been very aware during this pandemic that our org chart is totally inverted. The people in this organization who are paid probably at the lowest rate perform what is the most vital service of the ECUA. It's not the board members. It's not the people who are isolated in offices. It's the people who go out and they're in the field and they have to use some kind of public bathrooms. They are putting themselves at risk every day, and yet they're the ones who are at the lowest of their pay scale. To them, a financial incentive speaks volumes of how much we value that they are doing. So I wholeheartedly support this recommendation. I understand things are tight, and we're going to be dealing with a lot of that. I don't think this is the time to step back from recognizing those people who go the extra mile on behalf of our ratepayers. And Mr. Perkins, I didn't hear you, but I have a feeling you're going to want to weigh in on this as well.
Yeah, this is Mr. Perkins. I can count, so it looks like I'm the mustard in the middle of the sandwich on this one. But I appreciate what everybody is saying, and really all of the arguments make sense to me. But to me, what it boils down to is a couple things, and the idea of a week of paid leave with flex time and they can use it whenever they want, appeals to me. But, for an engineer, that week of paid leave might be $2,000 rather than the $100. And for 4 weeks or whatever, maybe 400 total. And I agree with what someone said, is that the frontline workers, the ones who are out there at risk, are the ones who really we should be focusing on. And the reason we should focus on them is that, with this opt-out thing that we said they can't take care of. So what we're basically telling them is, and what the opt-out thing says is that if you feel unsafe or threatened, or that it's a risk to you and your family and your loved ones and your grandparents and all, you can opt out. You don't have to go to work. But what we've said is that, no, we're an essential service. You don't have that option. If you do that, you'll be fired, basically. You have to be here, regardless of the risk. And and that's a tough position to put people into. And I think that they have worked hard through this. And believe me, most people would love to be working right now. There are a lot of people who can't work who would love to. But I think that our frontline employees that have really worked hard to take care of people and put themselves at risk deserve this this token appreciation. I mean, it's a little bit of money that will help them, but I think more than the money, it's the morale that it will build for them long term, and letting them know that we care about them. So, I'm as conservative as anybody fiscally, but I do think that when you lead an organization, you need to show leadership and take care of the community as a whole and the people who are running the ship that you're running. So I plan to vote for it, but anybody who votes against it, I certainly understand, because I heard those arguments. I understand that logic, and that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Dr. Alexander. Yes.
Yeah. So I would agree with my esteemed colleague that sits next to me when we're in regular office or in board meeting mode. I certainly do agree with her. I like that concept of a week off paid leave. And that really has more value in my mind. It has more value than a one-time $100 we're going to give folks, I guess. But the other thing is, and I think we have to be very, very, whatever we decide to do, I will support. But we just got to make sure that we identify those who are truly more at risk than others. Or either we decide to do it across the board for everyone. But we're going to have to be very strategic about who we consider to be at risk, because we don't want to upset the morale of those who feel they should have gotten and feel they're just as much at risk as anyone else. Or they're risking something that we not aware of or can't measure. So whatever criteria we come up with, or the board or the executive director come up with as to who will be compensated either through time off or through some one-time or weekly compensation, we want to make sure we get that right, so we won't get blowback on that.
Okay, yes, and the recommendation, by the way, is for the $100. So if you're recommending something else, it would take a substitute motion, or else to vote this down, just from a procedural point of view. Was that you, Mr. Perkins?
Yes, Madam Chairman. And none of this would apply to me. I wouldn't be getting any of it and don't want any of it. But in my other life as a corporate peon, I would much rather have, as an employee, I would much rather have the flexibility of 7 days of paid leave, so that when somebody's sick or I need to go to the driver's license,
Amen.
Or I want to take a vacation or go to a family event, I have that flexibility to do so. I mean, I would much rather have that. So to me, that's more of an incentive, and it's less of a direct financial impact, because we cross train and people cover. So I think it makes more sense. I just want to make sure that I'm being supportive. So I think I'll make a motion that we do a week of paid leave in lieu of the $100.
Dang, I didn't even have to argue position on my side. This is Vicki. I just have one addition to that. I'm going to agree with Cedric that we can't say 518 employees. We got 600 something employees. Now, I don't want to include me. I don't want to include, I'm sure the whole board will say they don't want to be included on this. But I don't think we can say not every employee. I think every employee had to come to work. That means they had to leave their family, come to work when other people were staying at home. They may have had children, they may have had parents, they may have had a plethora of reasons that they wanted to stay home besides just keeping themselves and their family safe. So I'm not going to vote yes on this. I would vote yes on it if it was all the employees and it was the week pay. So I will be happy to make that friendly amendment that it's a week pay. I mean, a week of leave.
I think that would be a substitute, probably.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll make a substitute motion that we give that week of paid leave to all employees absent the board.
Is that and there would not be the $100? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay. Is there a second? This is a substitute motion.
Could you repeat the motion? Could you repeat the motion again, please?
So the motion is for 1 week of paid leave for all of the employees minus the board.
I second that motion, Cedric. Not the motion.
Okay, we could break into songs.
Even though there's the song to it.
I'm ready for him to sing now.
So while I certainly understand the impetus in this, and I'm cognizant of the implications of what we're going through on ECUA finances, I feel strongly, number one, we have wonderful benefits for our employees with fairly generous leave time. I believe that if you asked those employees on the front line whether they would like to have this additional $500 or a week of leave, that they would prefer the monetary. I think that speaks to the value that we put on their work in a way that no leave time ever could. So I speak against the substitute, although I certainly understand why it's offered. And I think we all agree, by the way, that these employees need to be recognized far beyond what we can do. But I still believe that a monetary reward is what we need to do.
Madam Chair, Walker.
Dr. Walker, and then I'll catch you with Dr. Alexander. Yes, Dr. Walker.
I support the substitute motion because I think that a week of paid leave is a superior benefit to the monetary money that was being proposed. I also think that in a way it is more responsible to our customers and our ratepayers. I do think, though, again, I'll say this, that I don't think it should go to all of our employees. I do not think it should go to those who are not truly at a greater risk of exposure. Management has made many changes in how people work. Supposedly this is to reduce the number of employees who are at a greater risk of exposure. And I find it hard to believe that we still have over 500 out of 600 employees who are at a, quote, greater risk of exposure. Therefore, I would add an amendment to the substitute motion that instructing management to go back and review the employees who are, quote, at a greater risk of exposure, and be more restrictive in terms of the criteria by which they decide who to include in this benefit.
So this is an amendment. Is there a second to this amendment? So it dies for lack of a second. Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
And I'm just going to say I understand where you're coming from, Dr. Walker, but I happen to be an employer, and I know that I have a person out of my office, and the reason is she has things going on at her home, a pregnant daughter and some sick in-laws. I don't know what all of our employees have going on at home, so I'm not going to differentiate between employees for that one reason. I think they all deserve it, all however many we have, for coming to work during a pandemic when the rest of the people are trying to stay home and be safe. That's the only reason I'm saying that. So we are, and I do understand. I do understand where you're coming from, though.
So the discussion now is around yes, Cedric, and the discussion is on the substitute motion now. So you're recognized.
The only thing I want to say is this. Look, if we have 600 and some employees, whether they are interfacing more risk than others because of the way the organization is set up, I get that. I think we all are very sensitive to that. But I think we also have to be sensitive to the fact, to what my colleague Ms. Campbell is saying, regardless of whether they're interfacing with the public or not, everybody's life has been affected in some type of way. And whether it's a shift in how they child care and whatever the case may be, I mean, nobody could have planned for this. So, to me, and just to me, in all fairness, I believe however we're going to compensate one, let's compensate them all. Because even if we stop and look at ourselves as board members, we've had to make significant changes in our life. And we sit on the board. We don't go out and confront the community. However, we all, because of what is going on in this time that we're living in, and we don't really know how long this is going to go on, to across the board give our employees a week of paid leave is nothing, quite frankly, in comparison, I think, to what people had to adjust to. That was no fault of their own, and what we all have to be exposed to. And quite frankly, if it was left up to me, it would be $500 and a week leave, to be perfectly honest with you, because I don't believe in skimping with employees. I believe in giving them the very best that we can give them, and being able to in their recovery, be able to come back and feel just as dedicated to this job as when they left it, and be even more so because we as a board, we as a leadership, made sure that they were taken care of. And that's what's incredibly important to me. However, I felt it was important for me to go on the record and say that I will support whatever the majority of this board want to do, but we're not giving them anything, to be quite frank with you. I think we're compensating them and showing our gratitude to them, whether they're interfacing with the public or not. All 600 and some employees are going through something that has significantly shifted in their lives and moved things around to a place where we all are just uncomfortable in some type of way. So I will stop right there, Madam Chair.
Dr. Alexander, I heard in what you said what sounded like an amendment to this motion to apply this paid leave to all employees rather than to 400 and some. Is that an amendment
all
you'd like to offer?
Yes, ma'am. All employees.
I'm sorry.
And I think that was the recommendation.
No, that was the recommendation. I apologize, Brenda. Okay,
yeah, that was my recommendation.
Yeah, that was the recommendation.
Okay.
That was, yeah,
Sorry.
that was.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion, Mr. Perkins?
Is that? Yeah, that was the recommendation. Was all employees except the board members, which I like because I don't ever want it to look like we're voting anything for ourselves, you know. But I think that
That's right. That's right.
Initially, I was kind of opposed to all employees, but after hearing my colleagues, you know, I thought, you know, that's right. It makes sense that everybody is making changes, adapting in their jobs. Everybody's got a role. Roles are different, but I will support the substitute motion.
Just to be clear, I don't know that paid leave would apply to us anyway. But okay. So now the substitute motion is that we grant all employees one additional week of paid leave. Is that correct, Ms. Campbell? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. I am going. Yes, Dr. Walker.
Dr. Walker, one question.
Sure.
Could an employee apply to take that leave while the coronavirus situation is as bad as it is now, or only after we reach a period of calm?
I believe that was part of my substitute motion, was at the supervisor's discretion on the time that we could not have everybody leaving at once.
This is Mr. Perkins. The administrators have policies and judgment and stuff that they use for leave. I mean, so I don't think there's anything we need to do for that. If they see that staffing is critically low, they'll say, no, you can't take the leave right now. That's your job. I mean, it's not.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's left up to their supervisors.
Any further discussion? Let me say, because I always, if I'm going to vote no on something, I always like to let you know, and I am going to vote no on this, even though I will support it when it becomes the main motion. But I still believe that the additional pay would be the way I would like to see the employees rewarded. Okay, we will vote, and we'll start with Dr. Walker. This is on the substitute motion.
Yes.
The chair votes no. Ms. Campbell? Yes. Dr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Okay, so it passes 4-1. The substitute motion now becomes the main motion, which is to award all employees one extra week of paid leave at the discretion of their supervisors. The chair votes yes. Ms. Campbell? Yes. Dr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
So it passes unanimously. Thank you for the good discussion. I think we all agree that we wish we could even give more to the employees for the valuable service that they are providing during this. Okay. The next item 9C, is the interlocal agreement with Escambia County, the transfer station. I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson to give a background on this. I will then ask for Mr. Beasley. But before I do, I want to recognize Ms. Campbell's work on this. She has put in a lot of time on this issue, and I'm sure she won't be finished when this is finished, but I want to thank her for all she's done. Okay, Mr. Johnson, if you will introduce this issue.
Yes, ma'am. Certainly, our sanitation system we acquired from the county about 28 years ago, I guess. We have had a variety of issues over the years. The latest would be, I believe, our efforts to construct a transfer station on our property. off of Pine Forest Road. We have been in a lawsuit, I believe, since 2014, trying to resolve some of this. The board has, in the past, approved a draft interlocal agreement with the county aimed at proceeding with the construction of the transfer station back in January of 19. The county has not yet acted on that. The Ecua staff and the county staff and the county administrator met on March 4th of this year to try to work things out. They left that meeting, they believe, with our staff did, with the understanding that with a few minor changes to the previous agreement that was approved by the board a little over a year ago, that we would have an agreement that could be taken to the board. It is a true financial and really a risk management issue for Ecua. We've had 4 trucks turn over at the county landfill in the last little over a year at a cost of about $1 million. We're lucky that we didn't have any drivers hurt. We use the county transfer station on Palafox when we can, but often we overload their transfer station on Wednesday. They shut down on Thursday and Friday, so then our trucks must again drive to the Perdido landfill. The traffic on 9 Mile Road, the 9 miles under construction, Navy Federal is generating a lot of traffic. It takes a lot of time, a lot of overtime for our staff. It lengthens our routes and hurts our customer service. So we are very anxious to get going with the process of constructing a transfer station off of Pine Forest Road on our property. This draft agreement, we think, resolves the issues that were discussed at the meeting on March 4th, and we are presenting it for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Beasley.
Thank you, Chair Robert Beasley. I understand, I inherited this issue in this discussion between the county and Ecua, and my understanding is that it has gone on for some time. The efforts have to reach an agreement with the county started, or maybe even didn't start, but went with the Ecua passage of this agreement the first time, and when it was presented to the county. The county did not accept the agreement. It was not actually even put for before the board. It was, as you would say in the congressional context, killed in committee. Then there was a lawsuit. Then when I came on board, we had the opportunity to meet with the county on several issues. The relationship with the county is steadily improving for many different reasons. And I left that meeting with the impression that this interlocal agreement had some traction, that the idea of getting the transfer facility approved and constructed and operational was now supported by the county in general, in concept, whereas before maybe it was not. We had some clear and definite goals and objectives to accomplish, mainly getting the county representatives on board, the county commissioners on board to understand what the dynamic and what the facility was going to look like and how it would operate, just a little bit better understanding. As with anything, more information and education usually helps, and helps allay fears and concerns. We are in that process. The agreement that you're being asked to approve is the exact same with very few changes, meaning the date and the signature, I believe, of the agreement that you approved previously. It is also the same agreement that the county did not accept previously. This is a process. I believe that if the board is inclined to approve this agreement a second time, it would be a reaffirmation of the board's intent to move forward. It would be a reaffirmation of the terms of this agreement. I do not believe this will be the final agreement.
it is a negotiation. The county attorney as recently as last week has sent me an indication that she has a red line draft coming to me. I think it will continue. I think this board will have the opportunity to see it again in some altered or modified form. But a vote of support and ratification of the CAR terms would be helpful in moving the matter forward. We understand the urgency of it. Sometimes it's just difficult to move through various channels. We are making progress. And so I want you to know that, and I hope to bring back to you a modified agreement soon.
Mr. Beasley, would submitting this document that we have previously submitted be counterproductive in the negotiations, or would it just affirm our interest in moving forward? You have been involved in these negotiations, so I put that to you.
I do not believe it would be counterproductive as long as it does not come with some indication or message that this is the only agreement, sign it or don't, or something that constitutes a drawing of the line in the sand. It can only be affirmative, and it can only be a positive, I think, to show the county that we're still interested. The agreement is stale. It's been at least a year since you approved it. Even though you're approving the exact same terms, you're basically reaffirming your interest in staying involved in the discussion. So I do not believe that with just approval would be a negative impact on the negotiation.
Okay. Then the recommendation is that the board approve the attached interlocal agreement between the Ecua and Escambia County to allow the Ecua to construct and operate a transfer station at its existing sanitation complex that fronts on Pine Forest Road, with the understanding that there will probably be some changes to this as it goes forward, but this affirms our interest. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement, but I do want to discuss it.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Walker seconds.
Dr. Walker seconds it. You're recognized, Ms. Campbell.
So I really kind of didn't like the way the item was written, because although we've had issues in the past, I don't like to dwell on those times. We're working really, really well with the county right now on this issue and other issues, and we've all worked with our counterparts, I know, on this issue. I've worked with mine, and it's in our district, and our attorney has worked with the county attorney, and I do believe that we'll have a final agreement soon. So I'm hopeful, and I do suspect we will have much fewer issues that excel to courtrooms with these two government entities in the future under the direction of our new administrator and new legal counsel. I feel confident the entire board has taken an opportunity to talk with Robert about this issue. So we've approved it in the past. I'm happy to approve it today, but I would like to authorize the attorney, Robert Beasley, to continue working through the process with the county legal staff and bring us back a signed document that is approved and or signed by the county for final approval.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Well said. All right, we have a motion and a second. Anyone else wish to speak to this?
This is Mr. Perkins. Yeah, I agree with everything Ms. Campbell said. One thing, in addition to the financial savings and the practical sense and the bringing the risks down for risk management and all that, right now with the coronavirus pandemic, traffic is a lot lighter than but we're going to get back to business pretty soon, and traffic in Beulah and 9 Mile is, from what I hear, is pretty atrocious. And anything we can do to help ease those traffic problems, I think would be significant, and I think that would help. I think the county has that desire too. They've been fighting those traffic issues for a few years now, so I think it makes sense long term, and I am optimistic that we can get it done. Like Ms. Campbell said, the county has been working with us well on this, and I appreciate anything they can do.
And Dale,
thank you, Mr.
To add to that, this is going to save ratepayers, which are also known as taxpayers, money. And so I think that our counterparts we'll all agree that this is something we need to do because it'll save everybody money. I mean, when you have trucks that cost $400,000 turning over at the landfill, you got to stop. And you know, my counterpart has actually helped me get out and talk about it. So, and I appreciate that.
And I want to recognize Mr. Rudd, who has certainly been dealing day to day with all of these headaches and had to make things work with shutdowns and other things. He has certainly worked hard on this issue, and as have you, Ms. Campbell. Does anyone else want to add anything?
I say absolutely yes to Mr. Rudd. He's driven this train since day one. Thank you for recognizing that.
So we're voting on the recommendation with the stipulation that we understand that the negotiations will evolve. So we begin voting with Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Dr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
Dr. Walker.
An enthusiastic and hopeful yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you for all of the work that has gone into this. I'm optimistic. The next item is item 9D, Capacity Impact Fee Agreement, Commercial Large Meter Contract. The recommendation is that the board approve the continued use of current Capacity Impact Fee Agreement pending the results of the current ongoing study. Mr. Johnson, if you will address this issue, please.
Yes, Madam Chairman. In February, the board had a customer, the owners of College View Apartments, to come before them concerned about the capacity impact fee agreement that they had signed, where we monitor flows, and if the flows exceed the impact fees that they had paid initially in the previous 12 months, that they would be due additional impact fees. They indicated that after they got their bill, they made some water conservation changes and efforts with their complex, and were wondering if they could get a refund. The agreement specifically prohibits refunds, and after their presentation, the board asked us to review the policy for large meter contracts. We went back and looked. There are, in round numbers, about 500 of these contracts. We've been using this approach for the last 20 years, and on an average year, maybe 10% or so of these receive adjustments when they exceed their previous estimate. We looked at the potential impact if we started making refunds based on flows below the amount that impact fees have been paid on. It has a large potential financial impact on ECUA if we chose to do that, because we feel like if we change the policy, we would have to do it not only for College View but for all 500 of these accounts. That impact fee was in the $10 to $20 million range. We just don't believe that that's in ECUA's interest. On a parallel note, though, our engineering department had already been working with a consultant to begin review of our ECUA's capacity impact fees. It's been many years since they've been adjusted. We think that we've got some of the lowest impact fee rates in the area. And we've asked the consultant to look into this and to look as well, while they're doing that, into the commercial large meter contract impact fee policy that we have. We think it's a fair policy, but we think that after they finish their study, the board may have better information on which to evaluate whether to continue this policy or not. So, again, our recommendation is basically to continue on with what we have and see what comes out of the study.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there a motion?
Madam Chairman? Larry Walker. I was sort of the protagonist in the discussion of this previous in February, so I'll step forward now. I move the recommendation that staff has presented to us today, which would be essentially to, in essence, to table this matter until we receive the results of the study by Arcadis on our impact fees. I also think that this topic is so complex that it needs face-to-face discussion at length among us, and that these telephone conferences are really quite inadequate for good discussion and understanding of an issue like this. So I would propose, in addition to the motion, which I made very briefly at the beginning of what I'm saying right now, I would propose that we not take this up, that we table it in effect until we're able to have regular meetings again.
Dr. Walker, there are two different motions. You were moving the approval of the recommendation pending, but if a motion to table is not debatable, so are you making a motion to table?
Okay. No, I'm just officially I am moving the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. So we have an emotion.
I am suggesting, if I may, I'm suggesting that we not bring this matter up again until we're able to have face-to-face discussions. It may well come out to the same thing.
Can I make
the official motion is to support the recommendation.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to support.
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Well, let's see if there's a second on this motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now you're recognized, Ms. Campbell.
And the only reason is, while I'm not one to kick a can, can I ask Mr. Johnson, when do we think the study will be complete?
Mr. Johnson?
I hesitate to say, but I believe I've heard that it would be this summer. So I think it's a few months, probably 2 to 3 months away.
You may continue, Ms. Campbell.
My only problem with this is that I believe we told these folks, and I believe this was the one I couldn't even vote on. I believe we told them that they did not, that we weren't going to do anything about them. Where do they stand right now? That's my question, because I think we told them. That,
Madam Chairman?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I believe at the meeting in February, we basically the board directed us to basically suspend their payment plan that they had for the additional impact fees, and I see no reason to lift that suspension until we get a resolution.
Okay. So can I either amend your motion to keep that ongoing until we get the resolution?
I think that's implicit. I don't think you need to do that. If that was the recommendation to staff, that would continue until such time as we had a new impact fee discussion on this.
Okay, I just didn't see that part in there, so.
Okay. Do you concur, Mr. Johnson, that you would not make any changes in suspending their payment plan?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's all I was worried about.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? If not, we'll begin voting with Dr. Walker.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Ms. Campbell? Ms. Campbell?
I'm sorry, is Robert still on the call?
Yes, Robert's still on the phone. Did you need to ask him something?
Well, I do. I believe this is the vote that I did not vote on. So,
Okay.
because of conflict from my previous employer was their attorney. So, if that's the case, I would like to
Need to recuse yourself.
Robert.
So,
Mr. Beasley?
this is Robert, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an interesting question because this isn't really the vote directly related to College View. It is a vote related to the project or assignment that staff is given following the College View discussion and relates to kind of a bigger issue. If it's not specifically directed towards College View or relief to that entity, I do not believe Ms. Campbell has a conflict. If we believe that this measure being voted on directly impacts or benefits College View, then her abstention probably still remains.
So you see why I was asking, does this include the College View? That's specifically why I was asking that question.
My impression is that as a result of the issues brought up by College View, the board instructed staff to do a follow-up and a recommendation, and that this is the result from that instruction. It doesn't specifically relate to College View, even though that was its genesis. And that this recommendation relates to, but is not to the direct benefit or detriment of College View.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Robert. That's exactly what I was just trying to cover myself and you. Thank you.
Okay, so your vote, Ms. Campbell.
My vote is yes.
Okay. Dr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Okay, so it passes unanimously. You have a notification of an emergency purchase, but that concludes the operational items of today's meeting. The next item is a budget report, which will be wrapped into the executive director's report, but Ms. Sheldon is on the line so she can answer any specifics. But I will now recognize Mr. Johnson for the executive director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Starts with the two notifications of emergency purchase, 11A, regarding basically the Carpenters Creek sewer overflow back in February. It's finally wrapped up. It took about 6 weeks to really get it back in place. But just wanted to let you know about that. Also, the handout that was provided is for some sewer repairs on Gillamard Street between Maxwell and Jordan. It's a large diameter, 42-inch diameter gravity sewer trunk main. Could easily cause a big problem under a roadway there. We've got to do it. If it collapses and blocks the flow, then we've got a big SSO there as well. So we solicited proposals from 3 local contractors and went with the best proposal. And we will follow up with the paperwork on that with Mr. Beasley at a later date. I wanted to give you a quick report on Sharon Harrell. Most of you know she is the basically the assistant to the executive director in this office. She has been invaluable to me in my time back here in this office. She was involved in a traffic accident back in March. Pretty banged up. She is recovering. Every time we talk to her, to me, she seems to be doing a little better and a little better. She is, I believe, anxious to get back to work, and I think hopeful that maybe as early as Monday she'll be back at work. She's got a doctor's appointment coming up, and I think things will depend upon that report. But Sharon is a real asset, and I know Mr. Woody, who will be starting work this Friday, will be anxious for her to get back because she will be a lot of help for him. So wanted to let you know about that. Before I move on, wanted to kind of review items relating to the pandemic. There are several questions that have come up over the since the last board meeting. We had one presumptive case among employees of a positive test. Really haven't received definitive documentation on that. We believe it might have been just an error or whatever, but we took precautions and made sure that the employees that could have been impacted were notified and protected. As far as work situations, we have departments that are several departments that have basically split their staffs in two, where half work in the office on any day and the other half work from home on the same day, and then they reverse that schedule as they go. On a typical day, we will have anywhere from 40 to 60 employees that are connected via VPN to our system, working remotely. The customer service group works from home. They're able to get access to their phones. All their call monitoring that Mr. Brown does through his office is online, and so he can monitor their progress on calls and their productivity from that standpoint. Folks in the field are doing the best they can. They keep their distance as best they can. They sanitize their workspaces and their trucks on a daily basis. When they're exposed to raw sewage, they have decontamination stations set up. They go through protocols with proper gowning and degowning procedures for PPE. We keep a close eye on all employees. If anybody shows any signs that look like they could be having flu-like symptoms, they'll be sent home and asked to return a negative test or stay away for 14 days. There are, in terms of our budget and revenues, it's still early to really determine how much of an impact this will have. It certainly will have an impact. We know that. Last month, the board approved the refund of deposits on commercial accounts, and we've begun that process. In most instances, those refunds are being credited to the commercial accounts bills. That is essentially a reduction in cash flow on what money would be coming in on those bills. We've gotten about halfway through that and refunded about $850,000. And so we've got another few weeks to get through the other half of that, probably a similar reduction in cash flow from that. We will be reading commercial account meters in early May. So we will then, after we get that information, have a better idea on what kind of reduction in usage and subsequently revenue that might come from that process. It's much too early to know how the reopening of the economy and commercial operations will proceed. As mentioned mentioned earlier, we're still kind of waiting on the governor to provide some direction on how we move forward with that. We, of course, monitor cash flow anyway. We have for quite a while. We know that it's going to be important to look at all those projects in our current CIP that are in various stages of completion, and make sure we control those costs based on the cash flow projections that we've had in the past, and the cash flow projections that will be adjusted based on what we see happening in the future. Certainly, the fiscal year 2021 CIP program, we're going to have to look very closely at what level of projects that we are able to fund through that. There are a certain number that are, as I consider, must-do projects that we will need to look at whether or not we can fund out of operating revenue, or if there is some other means of paying for those things. There's been a suggestion of a rate decrease, and we not believe that is in Ecua's best interest. We have bond covenant requirements that require us to meet certain levels of debt service, and if we don't meet those, we risk damaging the credit of Ecua and losing the rating, the good rating that we have right now. So we're concerned about that. There was also a question about, is there a way to try to help customers that are having trouble paying bills? Ecua has for a long time had the Project EUAP program to where people could make voluntary donations that could be applied to people's utility bills. That program is there. So there might be an opportunity to reemphasize that to our customers, to give them an opportunity to help their neighbors in that way. There's a lot going on, and it changes every day. This pandemic has been a real challenge for the whole staff. They've stepped up very well, and I believe that as best as they can be, that Ecua is in a better position than most to cope with the potential impacts of this. I think we've got a good staff, and I think Mr. Woody is going to be a lot of help to helping the board with the staff to make the right decisions for the organization going forward. Which brings me to the point that this is my last board meeting as executive director. Mr. Woody will begin his duties on Friday, and I'm certainly glad to help him out if he needs me for a while after that. I never really expected to be back here. It was really a surprise when Dr. Walker called me back in October, and I even then didn't expect to be back here. But it's really been an honor to be considered, and I thank the board for that. It's been nice to reconnect with friends and colleagues that I'd left a year and a half before. Certainly the job has been more wide-ranging and complex than previous, but with the help of the senior management staff here, it really has been great, especially with Sharon's help and after she was hurt with Sherry Harden's help as well. But really, I've learned even more. It's just the whole organization, the rank and file employees that come to work every day and get the job done. There's example after example of the extraordinary work these people do. And of course, when I started in November, I don't think pandemic was yet invented as a word, but it's been interesting over the last couple of months. But again, the work that these folks do day to day that I work for is just amazing. And I've never been prouder of a bunch than I have been in leading this bunch. I'm going to miss them all again. So I wish the board and the organization luck going forward. So that's it for me.
Well, Mr. Johnson, on behalf of the board, we cannot thank you enough for your steady, stable leadership at a time that no one could ever have imagined. Your knowledge of the organization and the people in this organization and their confidence in you is what has made the difference in getting us through, to this point, a very, very difficult time. So we thank you so much. Any other board members have questions for Mr. Johnson or wish to say anything?
This is Vicki. I would just like to thank Bill for stepping in there. I'm almost positive if he'd have known then what he knows now. But you've done a bang-up job. I'll tell you what, this has been a difficult time. You've done a great job. You've answered every phone call, every email, text, questions. I would even send Bill a question like way after hours and think he'll get this in the morning, and nope, he'd pop right in there at 8 o'clock at night and answer the question. So thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you've done. I know that this has been a very difficult time, and I am sure that you did learn a lot more about the organization. I think we've all learned a lot about the organization and all the employees during this pandemic, but kudos to you. I appreciate you, and I hope that you enjoy your retirement the second time around.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Anyone else from the board? We now have
Alexander.
Oh, yes, you're recognized, Dr. Alexander.
Yeah, I just want to say to Bill, thank you for being a colleague and a friend. It's been great working with you. And as you heard Ms. Campbell say, you always have been quite responsive. And being the newest member on the board and coming onto the board, I have to publicly acknowledge you have been nothing but the very best to me. And I appreciate having an opportunity to work alongside you. Thank you very much.
Madam Chairman, this is Mr. Perkins. I was thinking, too, that once we get out of this social distancing dilemma, I'd like us to have a little, a little recognition thing from Mr. Johnson, an appreciation event, and probably makes sense at the same time to have an introduction to Mr. Woody, maybe kind of a dual event so people could come and meet the new executive director, and so we could rightfully thank Mr. Johnson for the hard work he's put in during his time here.
Thank you for the suggestion. I think that's an excellent one, Mr. Perkins. I'm sure we'll do it as soon as we're allowed to see each other. Okay, anyone else? If not, we will now have a second executive director's report because Mr. Woody is now a Pensacolian. Mr. Woody, you are recognized. I don't have you muted, do I? Mr. Woody, if you will hit *9, I will see where you are. I've got dozens of phone numbers, but I thought I unmuted you. I have to go down the list. 533. Okay, you are muted. I apologize. I am now unmuting you. And now my system is rebooting, so it might not have taken. Sorry, this periodically happens where it says there are no callers on the conference and it has to reboot.
Madam Chair, can I be heard now?
Yes, you can. So my unmuting did work. You're recognized, Mr. Woody, and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be your incoming executive director. I've been busy wrapping up my previous engagements, and pleased to be here now. The past several weeks, I've been working on completing the FY21 budget for the City of St. Joseph, who I just completed service with last Friday. A series of 5 virtual budget work sessions. Ours were audio and video, both. So the last 2 weeks have been quite busy with for me, while also preparing for a move and relocation at the same time. I left the very next day, literally on Saturday the 25th, and arrived here Sunday evening the 26th, about 11:30 or so at night, and spent yesterday unloading the van, so to speak. I have had conversations with Bill already. We have 2 meetings scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday to get a little bit caught up as best I can, and I'm looking forward to starting on Friday. Certainly, we have many priorities ahead of us. First and foremost, the ongoing COVID-19 response. Our responsibilities, first and foremost, are to employee and general public safety, and I want to get a complete overview of what those work accommodations are, as well as what we're doing to continue to provide top-notch service to our customers. Revenue shortfalls are an anxious issue for ECUA, as they are for so many other public entities. As I mentioned, just having finished the FY21 budget for St. Joseph's, we were going through the challenge of trying to forecast what revenue shortfalls might be due to sales tax revenues being down, due to businesses being closed. Here, likewise, businesses being closed and loss of employment are going to affect revenue shortfalls here as well. Rate relief also has been discussed from time to time, as Bill appropriately mentioned. Bond coverage issues and bond ratings are certainly very important, so balancing those mutual needs will be important. Look forward to talking to and meeting many other elected officials around the area. COVID-19, of course, will compromise that a little bit, but we'll figure it out one way or the other. We'll start with telephone conversations and then meet as quickly as possible. Certainly, the new transfer facility is a top priority. Randy Rudd and his staff will significantly benefit from that facility, but we need to be sure that our agreement is mutually beneficial to our other public partners, and we have an agreement that the county has approved formally, preferably before we bring it back to the ECUA board. And then lastly, customer service issues, use of technology, those things are certainly of utmost importance as well. So with that, I look forward to starting on Friday. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Anyone from the board? If not, we all welcome you, Mr. Woody. And we will go now to our attorney's report. Mr. Beasley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a report necessarily, except to say that there are several things that we would like to get to when we resume normal operations, one of which is an executive session. We have been prepared to have an executive session. As you know, the limitations of the sunshine are restrictive on all of us, but really restrictive on the ability of an attorney to communicate with their client. You must do so in executive session. We have one prepared. We have noticed it a few times. We prepared for it. It's not appropriate to do that in a virtual setting. It's not. It's a dynamic meeting, and so I'm going to ask to push that off again, and hopefully we'll reset it. But I am ready and eager to.
Okay, I lost you a little bit. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Beasley, or have you
yes, ma'am. I just I'm eager to share the information about the various lawsuits with the board at that executive session, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Anyone have any questions of our board attorney? Hearing none. We go to unfinished business, of which there's none, and then I had an item of new business, public outreach. You know, we've all been talking about how we're all in this together, and in many ways we are. We're all fearful and experiencing things that we've never felt before. But the truth is, this pandemic has affected people disproportionately. Some people are continuing to do very well. They continue to have work. They're profitable. Some people have windfalls, like Amazon and others. And some people who have just a fixed income still have a predictable income. But we have one group of people who is suddenly out of work, many of whom are in the hospitality industry. We took the measure at a previous board meeting to suspend cutoffs, but there is a time limit for our ability to do that. We can then, after that 120-day time limit, we can also work with customers to get caught back up. But for some of these people who are out of work and who will continue to be out of work, this is going to be fairly onerous for a long time. And so I've been trying to think of how those who are relatively unchanged economically can help those who are experiencing financial devastation. And one easy way is by allowing our customers to check the box to help those who need help with their utilities. But I think it would be good to have an outreach effort by our communications folks to promote this so that people will see that as an option. I think we've all seen that during this pandemic, people are very generous and people have stepped up. But I'd like to see us do what we can to let our customers help those who are unable to pay. So it's just a recommendation that I would like for our communication staff to look at. And I don't know that it needs a motion, but I open it up for discussion.
Madam Chairman, I think that's a great idea. I send a little bit with each bill. I don't know how much. I signed up for it years ago, but I send a little bit that goes to the EUAP fund. But I would certainly like some sort of outlet or venue, whether it's a Facebook donate page or whatever, where I could contribute a little extra money to those who are having trouble keeping their utilities on. So I think that's a wonderful idea.
Well, if our staff could, go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
I would totally agree. If there was a way for, and not just our board, but to get it out there for everybody to donate, I think that's a fabulous idea.
I had even considered I had considered forming a foundation that would be separate and apart so that these donations would be tax deductible so that people could get larger funds. And that may be an option. We can look at different options as to who kind of oversees who gets these. I think Salvation Army does what we're doing now, but there are some other options. At this point, my idea is not well formed, but I sure would like to have something in place so that we could reach out to people, because I think people would be generous. I think we're all aware of those people who have been hit hardest. Okay, does anyone else wish to share anything under board communications?
I do have one thing. I heard Mr. Woody say a few minutes ago that he had done a meeting, and I did one as well today with a thing called Zoom. And I've seen some other boards. I did a board meeting today with that, and I've done meetings in my office with it. I'd just like to see everybody's face. So if we're not going to be in the boardroom next meeting day, I'd like to see if we can work on a face-to-face meeting.
Zoom is pretty easy to use. I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll be in a real board meeting by next month. But if not, I mean, I would have no problem getting on Zoom and participating in that way.
Yeah, I think there have been some technical issues with Zoom and some. I want to make sure IT approves whatever we do, because people are using Zoom, but I'm hearing about some hacking and various other things. So we probably need to defer to Mr. Don and his people. But I agree. I want to see your faces too.
Madam Chairman.
Although you won't recognize me with my hair, so maybe I changed my mind.
Sir, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
This is Bill. Certainly, we can look into that possibility going forward. I think it might even be available through the same conference that we're using. But again, with the technical issues, we were a little concerned about trying to go there quickly. And certainly the staff can look into the Facebook program that you're talking about as far as donations. I also wanted to mention, I think you have somebody raising their hand before you check out.
Okay, sorry. Let me. I think I reset. Oh, I do. 0466. I will unmute that.
I believe that may be Ms. Schumo.
Okay. I just hit unmute, but now my whole thing is resetting. So if that is you, Ms. Schumo, or whoever that is, if you will try to speak, because you should have been unmuted.
Thank you. Hello, Madam Chair. My apologies. I did not realize that open forum was just at the beginning, or I would have spoke up then. I just wanted to ask, is the board considering, or would the board consider, depending on how next month goes, that the Citizens Advisory Committee is able to do a Zoom meeting if we're not able to be back in physically back in the boardroom?
Ms. Schumo, this is Vicki Campbell, and I would absolutely entertain that.
Wonderful. And also, I also want to just commend the board on thinking of the 630 plus employees that we have at Ecua, and I know everyone's going through something during this pandemic, so I just want to also just applaud the board for thinking of the employees.
Thank you, Ms. Schumo. Okay, anything else to come before us under board communications? If not, I want to echo the previous thank yous to Bill Johnson. It has been our pleasure, and to welcome Mr. Woody. Thanks for everybody for persevering. Thanks particularly to the employees of Ecua who have kept this ship afloat. We are adjourned.